Hello, my name is Voya and welcome to my deep guide, and in today's video I'm going to be comparing the Penstar eNote 2, a 300 ppi no-touch tablet under $400 US, and Boox Go 10.3 touch-enabled, also 300 ppi, also under $400 US. Both are 10.3-inch devices, both are note-taking capable, and both are running Android, although this one is running an Android 14 and this one is an Android 12 or 11, I believe. But the similarities and differences between the functionality, the actual ecosystem, that's not going to be a full-on focus here. What I'm going to be focusing on solely between these two is the image quality and the contrast, uniformity, and the brightness. Why? Well, because the main selling point and the whole point of Penstar is basically taking away the convenience and usability of touch functionality so that you should have what should be the brightest and the best clarity-like display currently on the market when compared to other devices such as the Boox Go 10.3. I'm going to be using my DAF methodology to test and put the claims to the test whether the eNote 2 Penstar Snow White or whatever, White Snow, you know nothing, Jon Snow type of screen technology, whether it's what they claim to be or not. Alright, and as usual, let's start with the readability tests, and on the left hand side we have the Penstar eNote 2, and on the right hand we have the Boox Go 10.3. And we can see that both of them are performing really well under the standard fonts at 100% blackness, and we have 16 points, 10 points, and 6-point font size. And while we can see that there's like some small differences and that yes, eNote 2 is performing a tiny bit better in 16-point font size and in 10-point font size, but when we go down to 6-point, there's a marginal advantage for the Go 10.3. But in reality, both of them are performing really well, and at this font type of thickness, size, and boldness, this is not something where you can see a clear-cut difference between the two. Same story continues when we go down to the blackness of 70%, so both of them are handling the transparency and contrast in a good way, although already here now we can see that eNote 2 has a more aggressive contrast kind of setting and has a little bit more clarity and presence when you check out the 6-point font size. So both of them are performing well, but the eNote 2 is edging ahead. When we go down to 50% of blackness or grayscale, we can see that 16 points performing really similarly, 10 points also almost exactly the same, and at 6 points we do have a bit of a difference now in favor of the Go 10.3, that it scores a little bit higher, but we also have a tiny bit more visibility and more consistency in the lines themselves, whereas here also really good, but you can see that they're kind of fading ever so slightly here and there and losing the cohesion and consistency, and that's that really small difference that we actually see between the results of the two. Alright, now let's push things further and see how they perform with thin fonts at 100% blackness, and we see both of them performing really strongly and really well at 16-point font size. Although now when we go down to 10-point size, now we're starting to see a little bit of a difference between the eNote 2 and the Go 10.3. Both are struggling a tiny bit here. You see that they have some issues with consistency, but overall there's just a little bit more crispness and presence in the rendering of the characters on the eNote 2 than it is on the Go 10.3, and the score actually reflects that as well. When we go down to 6-point font size, both of them are managing to do well, although 6-point on the eNote 2 with the contrast being a little bit stronger, it's performing a little bit better. And it's not just the contrast, it's actually clarity and sharpness that we have here, that the background is a little bit too grainy and messy on the Go 10.3, and that's starting to interfere with the readability and crispness of the images here, and that's simply not the case, or it's a lot better on the eNote 2. When we push things to the absolute limit and have thin fonts at 50% blackness, this is where all of the weaknesses will come to be kind of exposed. At this point, the algorithm is no longer able to kind of differentiate between the noisiness and the graininess of the background. So that's why it kind of, both of them are scoring 25 at 6 point, but they're basically illegible. So the 25 score is basically the uniformity and readability of the noisiness of the background of the e-ink screen itself. However, the more meaningful results here are the 10 point and 16 point, and both of them are scoring quite well, although surprisingly, and yeah, the score reflects that as well. For me, initially, when I was looking at eNote 2, it's legible, but it's less clear. I'm losing the ends of the A here, the minus and the underscore are almost fading away, and all of that kind of stuff. And on the Go 10.3, although generally more faded, but it's far more uniform. I don't have that problem of faded out A or the minus or the underscore, so it's a little bit more legible, although the contrast is in favor here on the eNote 2. At least it appears to be. We'll see when we get to that part of the test. And finally, for readability, we check out the thick fonts at 100%. None of these devices should have any difficulties with dealing with these types of fonts, but what we actually get to see is that contrast dominance on the eNote 2 here, and you can really see that clarity. It's just like how much crisper the characters are and more poppy, more well-defined they are than on the Go 10.3. It's not a huge difference, but it's a very observable difference at a large font size, and that actually matters. The same thing can't really be said on the 10 point. On the 10 point, they're very, very evenly matched. Yeah, there's some difference in the score itself, so maybe synthetic difference, but for me, observable, some clarity I can actually see in the at sign and in the percentage sign. Yeah, definitely a little bit nicer and sharper, but overall you really have to look for those differences. At 6 points font size, they are fairly similar, so they kind of get a little bit blobby in the same areas, but nothing dramatic and perfectly legible. Dropping this down to thick fonts at 50% of blackness, and we can see really good readability across the board. A little bit dominance in the 16 point for the eNote 2, pretty much equal on the 10 point. Yeah, observable and measurable. And for the 6 point, well, for me, they are very similar, but yeah, ever so slightly crisper and a little bit more legible on the eNote 2. What does the score say? Yeah, it actually reflects that difference a little bit. Especially you can see when we give these little kind of difficult symbols here, it's that's where the biggest difference can be seen in the edges of the A, B, and all of that kind of stuff. But overall, yeah, we can see that in most of the situations, the readability should go in favor of the eNote 2. Not dramatically, but some. All right, onwards to the contrast and uniformity portion of the DAF analysis. We're looking at a rendering of the pure white color and the black color in excellent, average, and poor lighting conditions. In the display portion of test, which is what this is, the shutter speed of the camera has been adjusted to equalize the exposure and lightness in all of the lighting conditions, and this serves to expose uniformity issues of the display panel itself, basically the quality issues of the panel itself. And in the observable portion of the test, which is going to be the next one that we check, is going to be the shutter speed is going to be adjusted to match human eye levels, what the human eye will be able to see in excellent, average, and poor lighting conditions. And when we check out the pure display quality here and the variability scale, we have a very clear difference in brightness of the white rendering. It's even very easy to see by the naked eye here, but you can also see that we have 0.76 in excellent, 75 in average, and 77 in poor, versus 66, 66, and 68 on the Go 10.3. So obvious difference in whiteness being rendered whiter and brighter and a little bit more uniform. It looks like it, at least, on the eNote 2 versus Go 10.3, which is not really a surprise because Go 10.3 is a little bit darker than other touch-enabled devices themselves. Naturally, it's going to be darker than this one as well. What is interesting here to see is that the rendering of the blackness is not that different, the darkness itself. We got 55, 57, and 54 on the eNote 2, and we got 54, 55, and 53 on the Go 10.3. In reality, as you can see, they are very similar. Moving on to the observable portion of the test, so excellent, average, poor lighting conditions on both of them, and we got 76, 54, and 33 on eNote 2 for the whiteness versus 66, 44, so 54, 44, and then we got 33 versus 23. So on average, 0.1 difference in brightness is maintained across lighting conditions, both in display and observable measurements here for contrast and uniformity. When we look at the blackness rendering, well, we got 55 versus 54, we got 76 versus 76, so identical in average, and we got 88 versus 87, virtually identical on the poor lighting conditions. So the rendering of the black is very similar on both of these devices, with the main difference obviously being the rendering of the whiteness between these two. When checking out the reflectivity attributes between the two, we can see that the Boox Go 10.3 scores a little bit better in the intensity, and you can actually see that as well. It simply doesn't get to be as bright as it is on the eNote 2. Although sharpness, you can also observe that it's diffusing in a much wider way, and ever so slightly we have a little bit sharper kind of edges defined here on the Go 10.3, but objectively speaking, I think that both of them are performing really well as far as reflectivity goes. We'll see how they sum up because, yeah, one is performing better in one field and the other one in the other, so we'll see how that sums up in the final results. Both of these devices have 4 refresh modes, so they match there quite nicely. But what we can see here is that the ghosting performance is in text and in graphics a lot better on the Go 10.3 versus eNote 2. But when we see the combined method, it actually scores a little bit lower, or quite a bit lower, on the Go 10.3 in the normal refresh mode. In the clear refresh mode, well, a similar story kind of continues. A bit better in text, a bit better, no, actually a lot worse in graphics in the speed refreshment, and basically when we have combined that issue with the graphics, deghosting, very present on the Go 10.3 and just pushes the combined score really high when compared to the eNote 2. Similar story, they're trading punches here, with Go 10.3 remaining to have issues with pure graphics content, which seeps into the combined content here as well, where you can clearly see that both of them have issues, but much clearer remnants of the previous image on the Go 10.3. And we get to the fastest rendering here, and similar story simply continues. Actually, they almost equalize in text and graphics, but in the combined one, eNote 2 outperforms Go 10.3 in ghosting performance there as well. I haven't really checked these results before, but when I tested writing on both of these, they felt remarkably similar. So I'm genuinely interested to see the results here. So let's see, Go 10.3, roughness curve and the profile curve here. So we have roughness results of 0.572 of RA and RASD 0.688. 8, both of which are good values for this, and the profile curve has nice kind of dips here for valleys and nice sharp peaks, and most importantly, good healthy distance between highest of the peaks to allow the tip of the nib to actually just kind of fall in here and capture the structure. And when we go to eNote 2, we have extremely similar values, both RA and RASD virtually the same. And even the profile curve and the roughness curves are very, very similar in character. We have kind of good dips here, a little bit more uneven dips, but the peaks are fairly sharp and a healthy distance between the highest of the peaks. So no wonder that they felt the same, because yeah, they performed the same as well. All right, and it's time to check out the DAF results here, how they sum up. And in blue we have the eNote 2, and in the orange we have the Go 10.3. And yeah, in readability we can clearly see like there's not a huge difference, but there is a noticeable difference. This is not a margin of error. This is a quality difference between the clarity and readability between these two devices. And yeah, what I reacted to on the thick fonts, that they were simply popping in a better way on the eNote 2, it's definitely reflected here in the scores. So across the board and overall, eNote 2 has slightly but noticeably better readability than the Go 10.3. Then we go to contrast and uniformity, and in both display variability score and observable variability score we see the similar story continuing, with the difference and advantage going to the Penstar eNote 2 much more on the observable variability score, which is the one that counts most, because this is what you see. This is the difference that you will see between these two. This is mainly like kind of lab-like type of thing, but even there you see a difference, and that just means it's going to be much bigger in observable. Display consistency, it's interesting that the Go 10.3 actually ekes out ahead of Penstar eNote 2, and then I had to analyze the results, and then I saw that actually in some of the whiteness renderings on the eNote, there were some dark blotches that did give it, non-favorable uniformity scores in whiteness. But overall, when you sum it up, eNote 2 has better contrast and uniformity than the Go 10.3. It's not by miles ahead, but it is noticeable and measurable. When we look at the reflectivity, as I said, yeah, one is better in intensity, the other one is better in sharpness, but it averages out so that they're more or less performing exactly the same. And that was the impression that I was also getting. Slightly different character, but overall excellent reflectivity on both of the devices. Ghosting, we can definitely see here that the eNote 2 overall has outperformed the Go 10.3, simply because we've seen the Go 10.3, while performing well in specific just text images or something like that, it was really struggling with the combined context, and that's the one that's the most important one here, because that reflects the reality of what you're going to be reading. And especially, yeah, in different refresh modes, it was just starting to lag consistently behind eNote 2. So eNote 2 has better deghosting performance than the Go 10.3. Surface roughness, no surprise here that they're virtually scoring identical, because yeah, they have almost identical type of characteristics. Refresh time here, well, this is not a surprise either, because Penstar eNote 2 is a slow refresh device in all refresh modes, and Go 10.3 simply outperforms it quite significantly. This is not a small difference. This is a very, very meaningful difference in refresh rates here. And this is something that you are going to be interacting with on a daily basis. So you get better speed at the price of ghosting. You get less ghosting, but lower speed on eNote 2. Writing latency, we have lower is better characteristics, and we can see that the Go 10.3 is edging ahead noticeably so, almost by 10 milliseconds ahead of eNote 2, which averaged at 48.38 milliseconds, and Go 10.3 at 40.04 milliseconds. Neither are blisteringly fast or anything like that, and at this point both of them feel a little bit kind of slowish and sluggish compared to the 20s and the 12 milliseconds of the modern devices. But this difference is actually something that you do notice, because I don't know what exactly happens with human perception here between 50 and 40 milliseconds, but once you actually get to the 40 and sub 40 milliseconds, it starts to feel very, very natural and not that laggy. And when you are approaching the 50 millisecond, then it's something that you can just clearly observe. So on paper, not a big difference, but in reality, this is an observable difference that you will feel and see. Surface distance, Boox Go 10.3 edges ahead considerably here as well, because we have, even though both are non-front-lit devices, and Penstar eNote doesn't have the touch layer, the capacitive layer stack at all, but even so, it has 0.8 distance of surface to screen distance, and Boox Go 10.3 also without front light, but with the touch capacitive layer there, is only 0.65, making it more immersive and you feeling a little bit more connected with the content of the screen. So we'll look at the final results. And these guys have been trading blows all over the place, but I really can't believe this. It's 51-1-2 versus 51-2-1 between these two as an overall score result between them. Okay, well, this is why I have included these three subcategories as well, because they give different weights to different aspects of these devices. So as e-readers, let's see who edges ahead. Well, eNote 2 edges ahead of Go 10.3 as a purely e-reader type of a device, simply because it has better readability and better contrast and uniformity. Those are the aspects that are going to be noticeable here, including the deghosting as well. If we look at it as a notebook, well, Go 10.3 definitely edges ahead here because of better writing latency. And if we look at the tablet here, well, yeah, I need to address this because obviously the final score is not taking into account correctly the presence of Google Play Store, because I intended to, or it's supposed to, calculate and give significant amount of weight for presence of Google Play Store when you're looking at the e-tablet category. And eNote doesn't have it, and Google Go 10.3 does have it, yet yeah, it scores kind of lower here, which doesn't really make sense. So I have to kind of look at this, but for my money, yeah, I think that Go 10.3 is a better e-tablet device than the eNote 2, mainly because, yeah, it's a little bit faster refresh rates, it has Google Play Store, and it has a bit more capabilities overall. But yeah, what about that final result, the DAF results? This is kind of ridiculous. It's like as close as it gets, and for them to actually trade 1-2 with 2-1, wonderful. Well, there you go. So those are the results. Is this something that you were expecting? Are you surprised with the results or anything like that? Please do let me know in the comments down below, and also do let me know that what are your thoughts between these two devices, because yeah, as I said, if you're looking for sub $400 10.3 inch 300 ppi tablets that are EMR compatible and all of that kind of stuff, like able to do a lot of things, well, these are primary ones that you are probably going to be looking at, because other ones are crossing that $400 boundary. So what are your thoughts, and what would your choice be? Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, stay healthy, and see you in the next video. Bye!